every business at some stage has a problem that happens at 10 p.m. on a Sunday or 4 a.m. on a Wednesday. Whatever it is, you have to have a business where you're not going to hate it or yourself if you have to make that personal sacrifice to handle it. So the way I look at it is like, if you're on vacation, if this business interrupts you for the entire vacation and you lose your 1 week of vacation you have per year, are you going to end up resenting the business or the team or whatever?
Customer, yeah.
If the answer is yes, then maybe firstly you should probably not be buying a business at all, and you probably should not be buying that business.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Thomas, how's it going, man?
Hey, buddy. Good to see
So
you.
good to have you on here. I love that we just bantered for 20 minutes. Hopefully, Jarrett's going to put all this on.
All the good bits.
All the good stuff. You are the co-founder. Are you CEO of FE?
No, I'm definitely not the CEO.
Okay, so you're not responsible for actually the important stuff, but
I just get the credit for the good stuff.
There
and
we
I get
go.
none of the blame for the bad
somebody
stuff.
else takes care of it. FE International, broker for tech companies, internet companies.
Yeah, we're an M&A firm. We focus on SaaS, e-commerce, content business.
Yeah, you're the SaaS guy that I send everybody to. How long have you been doing that now? A decade?
Yeah, nearly a decade. So we founded May 2010.
And just got named Inc. and the UK version top company.
Yeah.
So that's crazy that you're...
So Europe has an Inc. 5000 list and the US has an Inc. 5000 list. We have two entities and we're in both. And we think we're the only company in the world that got on both.
Okay.
Fun
and
fact.
why do you have two entities?
So as a company, we started out in the UK. That's where we're originally based. So we have a UK entity, and then we have a subsidiary entity in the US. And the main reason we have two entities, we have employees in the UK, we have employees in the US. So you have to have an entity for both, yeah.
And what is it that, like, when a company's thinking of selling, when they come to you, what's the stuff you help them with?
Yeah, so like at a fundamental level, usually we try to keep a really open line with founders who are thinking about selling one day. So it's never only speak to us if you're thinking about selling tomorrow. At the very base level, we're trying to get them an understanding of what their company's worth today and where they need to get to in the future. So for most founders, what we think the business is worth today is not what they want to sell for. But usually people from there have a time or a value-based goal, and we'll help you determine what that is. So it may well be that today your company's worth $10 million and you want $50 million or $20 million or $100 million. It doesn't really matter what that number is. That's a very personal number, and that's something that we would then help you determine and also figure out with, I always like to call it personal and company stakeholders. So that might be your wife or your husband or your business partner. It could be your investors, so you're aligned with what you're trying to achieve. Because otherwise you can be in a situation where you have great company, you maybe have a co-founder, the co-founder wants to get to X, you want to get to Y, and if they're completely different numbers, you're not going to be aligned.
So you actually help, you suggest that to them right off the beginning.
So that's what we want to do, because the nature of our business, we only get paid if your business sells.
Yeah.
We don't take a retainer, there's no incentive for us whatsoever.
And you get paid based on the number.
The value
so
of the business.
So you want it to be
the
as
higher
high
the
as
value, the more we get paid.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that we've been in business nearly 10 years, have a huge amount of inbound interest. I guess the value of referrals compounds over time.
Yeah.
So we're not short of business. So it's in our best interest to give you the best advice. So if you come back to us with a $50 million company, that's better than a $10 million company.
Yeah.
But you have to make that decision yourself. We don't say your number should be 10 and we also never tell people if their goal is realistic or unrealistic. We might just give them a timeline. So if you're at $100,000 today and you want to get to 50 million, we're probably not going to be working together in the next 12 months. That might need a fundamental pivot or shift in your strategy to get to where you want to be, or just a change in ambition.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like you're probably not going to get to 50 million working 10 hours a week, but yes, you can have a nice business kicking off 200K a year working 10 hours. So you have to really like align those things.
Now I remember, and maybe they're still around, like sites like Flippa. Like, what's the difference between a Flippa? I mean, I feel bad, Thomas, asking you this question because I know
It's a fair question,
but it's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference, and what do you feel the value add can be by having somebody like you support a process?
Yeah, so there's lots of marketplaces out there. I guess whatever you're selling in the world, there's a marketplace. I generally think marketplaces and the mechanism of a marketplace works really well if you have a business. And there's probably a place to other things. Maybe it's like antiques or anything like that below $10,000. At that level, it really is just the highest bid wins. So if you bid 10,000, I bid 5,000 for this glass, then you're going to win every single time. With a business, it's a much more of a complex transaction. If it's and what we generally advise to clients, which most people don't understand when they start the process, is often the highest number or the highest bid is not always the offer you want to go with. It's all about the terms, the structure, the alignment. If you're going to sell your business to someone for $10 million, there's going to be a transition period. That deal is unlikely, or that can be unlikely to be all cash.
Yeah.
So you have to align with them. You have to like them. A lot of people think it's just about the money until they realize that you're effectively selling your legacy. You want to make sure that
It's going to be in good hands.
you want to make sure that in 5 years' time, when you say, I sold X,
You're proud.
the X is still doing well. It's not shut down, bankrupted, was run into the ground by the acquirer. So fundamentally, the mechanisms behind the marketplace, which is purely bidding, does not work for a bigger business. And then beyond that, marketplaces are self-serve, so you have to figure everything out yourself. The valuations, the contract negotiations, the kind of buyers looking on marketplaces are also completely different from the kind of buyers who are working with M&A firms and strategic buyers. So the marketplace mechanism works well below 10K. Beyond that, you really want to be in a position where you have someone who can help you weigh up the different options, get multiple offers for you, and ultimately find out the best offer and structure for you. And I'd say beyond $1 million is very rarely the highest bidder wins. It's usually a combination of structure, bid, fit, how much you like them is a really important part, and that's why having an advisor like us in the way is good, because we'll do calls. For most deals, there'll be an in-person due diligence meeting, so that alignment is a really important part of it. So say at a fundamental level, that's the main difference between an M&A firm like us and a marketplace. It's really just the mechanics.
How do you avoid, as somebody takes a performance-based fee, like how do you protect yourself to not work with a dud?
Yeah, so I'd say at the moment, the vast majority of our business is inbound. We've completed over 750 transactions. And entrepreneurs, as you know, like to talk. They like to share their knowledge. Yeah. So we get a lot of, from a marketing perspective, it's actually quite difficult to track where our business comes from, because you may have heard about us and you work with us.
Well, I remember, reading your blog post, hearing about you, and then I think you guys worked on Rob at Drips.
Drip. Yeah, that was 2016. So
I was like, okay, these guys are, doing real stuff.
Yeah. So from that perspective, we have a very long client life cycle. We do lots of things where you're going to hear about us but are not in your face. You're never going to see me at an event and I'm handing out business cards saying, hey, come work with us, come sell your business. It might be a podcast, it might be a video interview, it might be a book, it might be our conference. It could be all sorts of different things like that. So we have lots of different touch points throughout the process.
Your magazine.
The magazine, exactly.
Yeah.
So we do tons of different stuff to be, I wouldn't even say front of mind, like middle of mind.
Yeah.
You know who we are, we have a good reputation. We're fortunate, so internally we effectively consider ourselves to be as exclusive as Harvard with the intake of businesses we work with. So for every 100 businesses that inquire, we might only take on 1 or 2 of those. So a lot of it is have a huge amount of inbound interest. We can be very selective with who we work with because we've sold so many businesses over the years. We know what sells, we know what doesn't sell. Sometimes we may be a little bit speculative. It might be a business model we've not seen before, but we think will be a good fit for our buyers. In that case, we might be a bit more conservative with the valuation or the fee structure or just setting expectations. We'll always be straight up. We never say, we're going to sell it this year and $10 million in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We're always honest, and I find that it's not charging people any money as long as you're honest and upfront. They can.
But you've got to do some real work to get it ready for marketing, right? So you got to create.
Yeah, we have a team of like nearly 45
people.
Do you
ask for them to give you an exclusive so that they're not?
So we do ask for exclusivity.
Okay.
We don't ask for any retainer, and the exclusivity starts once the business has been listed. But no, we have a team of 45 people, and publicly, you would maybe only see 5 of those people.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the work is behind the scenes. It's a valuation team who are building valuation models to make sure that if we tell you your valuation is X, that X is accurate.
Yeah.
If we value it too high, the business isn't going to sell.
Yeah.
If we value it too low, then you're going to be frustrated if the business sells in 30 minutes with 20 bids. So it's a bit of a balancing act between too high, too low, and just right. And people hire us because they actually want to sell. We're definitely not the company you come to if you want to send it to 5 companies and see what happens. We're hire us, we will sell your business.
Yeah.
We will be honest with you up front. Probably not going to get 50x, but you're also not going to get 1x.
Yeah.
No, so we invest a huge amount in the process. We have a 94.1% success rate for businesses we take on.
Yeah.
So it's very rare for us to get it wrong.
How do
in that
you
respect.
generate demand, or how do you create the market for companies? Like if I'm a founder and I'm like, okay, I want to sell my B2B SaaS company, I don't even, like, most of them wouldn't even know where to start finding people that buy these things. How have you guys done that? And like, what's the promotion? Like, is it, I think of real estate, right? Real estate's similar where they like package up the house and they have real estate listings and stuff. Like, what do you guys do? Obviously you have like your own lists and audience and stuff, but like, what is the process of promoting, marketing, company for sale?
So as we're going through the process of preparing the business for sale, our M&A team, who are effectively the sales guys, it's their job to go out and find the buyer and sell the business to them. As we're going through the process,
Will they go cold to companies?
To some extent. So I'll go through the process. So they will be building out a ideal target demographic for who's going to acquire this business, and that will not just be one buyer profile. That'll be lots of different buyer profiles. That might be private equity firm looking for B2B SaaS doing $1 million ARR, which is quite a generic criteria that hundreds of PEs will have. It might be the individual who's saying, I want to buy a business, I'm going to use a SBA loan. So we'll narrow it down, and then of our network at the moment, we have about 41,000 buyers in our database or network. We will then narrow that down on a particular business, usually to about 1% of that to 2%. So it's usually 400 to 1,000 buyers that we've said, based on the criteria they've provided to us, whether that's budget, business model.
Can people get added to that list on your website?
Yeah, so anyone can come onto our website and you can sign up to get our listings, which are just generically sent to you. You get a weekly newsletter. That's a very passive form of marketing from our perspective. And then there are various email flows and call flows that if you want a better chance of buying a business, you should get in touch with someone on our team, provide them more information, and make sure you're qualified. Because then effectively the way the process works is
those people get the first stab.
Yes. So we go out in 3 phases. We go out in what we call pre-marketing phase, which is 2 weeks of an extremely segmented list. And that's where we start the strategic outreach as well. So it might be, here are 50 PE firms we've identified that might be interested. A lot of clients come to us and they already have some interest.
What would the email sound like if you sent it cold to a PE firm or to a strategic company?
So if it's cold, it'll usually just be something as simple as, hey, and then with an introduction, I'm Thomas, founder of FE International. We're representing a business that, based on your criteria, I think might be a good fit. Here is the teaser. So in that case, we would attach a 1 or 2 page PDF, which is
That's
a very
prospectus-ish.
So it'd be a very anonymous, high level. So it might be, this is the industry, this is the high level financials. If you want more information, they then have to sign a confidentiality agreement with us. At we're stage, we would send them a prospectus, which is usually 40, 50 pages for the average business we represent. That will get sent across. And that's also what the people who are in our pre-marketing...
they get that?
Yeah.
Okay, so they skip the whole thing.
Because they've already qualified themselves to even give us that information. So we know they have the money. We know they're ready to go. We know they're going to keep it confidential. So we start with that process. 2 weeks after that, we almost always have a bid or multiple bids, depending on the size of the business. If it's relatively small, so let's say it's $100,000 business, probably already sold. If it's a $10 million business, you're probably starting to get indication of interest, which is usually something you send before a letter of intent, and then we'll work through that process. 2 weeks after, it goes out to everyone. So that's where you might, if you're on our generic email list, you'll see it. Hey Dan, here's a new listing, couple of bullet points. Fill out this form if you want a little bit more information.
Yeah.
So that stage you get that. And then beyond that, we also use a bunch of third-party sites which are very similar to real estate, which is effectively like MLS. For us, that very rarely finds a buyer for that business. That's really just network building for us. It's people who are browsing to buy businesses.
Yeah.
We want them in our network. They might buy in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
But the only way you find these people is if you're actually selling the business in the first place. It's a little bit chicken and egg.
And I know strategic can range, but like somebody's got a $1 million ARR SaaS company looking to exit. What's the multiples looking like in the market today?
So on a SDE basis, so that would be your
Seller
net
discretionary
income minus what you're paying yourself.
So explain SDE because most people don't.
Yeah, so it's effectively depending on the size of your business, it's
And it
probably
stands for seller discretionary.
discretionary earnings or income
Yeah.
or cash flow. So it
Yeah.
could be, all those things are effectively the same.
Okay.
So effectively, what your business makes on an annual basis net,
Yeah.
pre-tax,
Minus your salary.
minus your salary, minus any other benefits you take. So it might be a car, conference travel.
Things that are
which is
not core
often
to the business that you
vacations.
just decided were business
Yes,
expenses.
and everyone does this. So it's nothing to.
I know. I talked to a
There's-
guy once. He said there's every business has 2 sets of books.
Yeah. So there's no
Yeah,
there's
no
no shame
judgment,
in that.
no
Everyone does
shame.
it.
Yeah.
I always say to people, like, treat us like you would with your attorney. Give us
Yeah.
we will help you if you give us the information. A lot of people are super sketchy and they'll say, "Oh, like, actually my business makes millions, but it doesn't show any profit." We won't work with those
You're
people.
like, I
So
can't because you can't disclose it. Right?
Yeah, you ask like how we vet people. Part of it is if we think in any way they're acting dishonest in the
Shady.
process, we just kick them out.
Yeah.
And we will do that to people
On both
a
sides.
long way down the process.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're 3 months into the process and we've spent tens of thousands in team overhead. If we don't think they're honest, that's going to burn our reputation
you
down the
gotta
line more than
go.
them. So
Yeah.
we just kick them out. And I guess that's the fun part of being a founder or my business partner, CEO. He'll handle that. So those hard conversations sometimes have to happen. Yeah, so from that, and then you also might adjust out any one-time expenses. So, for example, if you've gone through a rebrand, you spent $100,000 to redesign your site, and that's something you haven't done for 5 years, we might be able to adjust out that.
Yeah.
Anything that is not reasonably likely to be recurring.
Yeah.
So there's definitely sort of a bit of a subjective. Everyone will argue like, this is too high, this is too low, you can't include this, you can't. So the way we do it is we're just transparent with what we present. We say, well, this is SDE. If you make an offer on a business, we'll then share all that information with you. If you're not happy with it, then you can push back and say, well, I don't believe that this is an add back. So it's always a little bit of a discretionary process, which I guess is it's quite an ambiguous term.
Yeah.
But effectively, that's why you're hiring us. Like, we're going to present your financials in the best way possible, and then it's our job to negotiate with buyers why that's justified.
So let's say $1 million ARR, SDEs usually look like what?
I'd say you're probably going to be 400 to 500
Yeah.
on the average SaaS we see at that
Yeah.
size. Multiples are going to be anywhere from 3.75 to 4 up to 10,
Yeah.
depending on the
But
business.
still, so 3.7, even at 3x, you're at 1.5 on a 500
Yeah.
SDE. I feel like most SaaS company founders think that they're worth more.
Yeah. So the key variable is really growth. So growth rate is super
Okay, so
important.
the 3.7 upward, what's impacting the,
So growth rate is probably the main one.
and what would get you a 10x
I'd say at least 100% year on year. So
for 3
aiming-
years?
just in the last 12 months would be fine, depending what's happened to achieve that.
Okay.
If you've
Paid
say-
a lot of money on
let's say
ads.
let's say you've just launched a new version,
Yeah.
and a bunch of people are signing up because it's great. Probably not. If it's sustainable and so the other key is expansion revenue. If you can show like negative churn, you can show that your expansion revenue is surpassing anything you're losing, then that's extremely powerful. So we're working on a business at the moment which is mid 5-figure deal. He does in the region of 4 to 5 million ARR, extremely profitable, runs over 50% margin.
Okay.
The multiple on that is nearing 10.
Okay, so he's at 5 million ARR, let's call it 2.5 in profit.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a 4x. Is it because of the expansion revenue?
He's
Or?
significantly higher than that. So that valuation is north of 30.
Okay, wow.
So that business is growing very consistently in the 3 to 5% month-on-month level.
Yeah.
Has a lot of enterprise clients, has a huge amount of room for expansion. And in his business, and this would be relatively rare, I guess the kind of people who are listening to you are probably not going to fit this dynamic because he doesn't spend much time in the business. He sits back, works a few hours a day, isn't really that proactive. He just happens, he's a
serial entrepreneur?
Fantastic. No, he's not a serial entrepreneur at all. He actually does a lot of local politics, but the business he runs, he's an extremely good developer, built a good product, found market fit years ago, and has signed up some really big enterprise clients who love the product so much they keep expanding revenue without him having to do a huge amount. So he fundamentally built a good product. That's, I'd say, in the world of bootstrapping, that's my version of a unicorn.
Yeah,
do not see
rare.
businesses like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, those multiples can happen if you have that expansion revenue, if you have that consistent growth, and if you have a huge amount of potential outside of that.
Yeah.
So the buyers for that business are a multi-billion-dollar
And that's
fund.
the thing, right? Is that there's more buyers. People don't realize that, there's no lack of capital in the world. There's just lack of big enough opportunities for people to deploy capital. Like they don't want to write little checks.
Yeah.
Right.
So we haven't added up recently how much investable capital our buy network has, but it would be safe to say it's in the trillions of dollars.
sure.
There's a huge amount of money out there, and funds, contrary to popular belief, want to deploy that capital. And they have to deploy that capital to generate returns for their investors. So if there's a good business, so on that business, I believe we had over 10 bids, which were all qualified bids, good bids. So that was extremely popular for a business that is effectively mid-8 figures. So most people think the bigger a business gets, the less buyers there's going to be. In reality, once you get, I'd say 1 million ARR probably is a reasonably good
Yeah, it's the beginning.
indicator.
But 5
once you
mil
get
plus,
above that, you definitely start to get some bigger fish. And then once you get to 5 million and above, you start to get to the next level. So in this case, it's a multi-billion-dollar fund making the acquisition. This would probably be one of the smallest deals they've ever done.
Yeah.
When the deal gets announced, some of their other portfolio companies are household names you would have read about in TechCrunch when they did their deal. So in that situation, those multiples do happen. The average slow-growing $1 million ARR business is probably not going to be at that. You're probably going to be in that 4 to 8 times range.
Yeah.
And that's why, right at the beginning, we were talking about valuations. That's why we do a valuation early. We don't commit you to an engagement agreement because most people assume their valuation is much higher than it actually would be. And that's
But
why
the truth is SaaS is in the unique space of having higher multiples than restaurants, agencies. Like it's a cool business.
Yes, I mean, if we were compared to their content or an e-commerce-based business, the valuations on average are almost double. So the valuations are definitely higher. I guess the trouble in the world of SaaS is everyone knows someone who's had an exit which was at 20 or 50 times, so they assume they can have
So
that
they
same
can
exit.
have the same thing.
The reality is, if that is going to happen to you, you're probably not going to be listening to you or listening to me because you're going to have someone knocking on your office door or cold emailing you who legitimately wants to acquire at that level.
Yeah.
So we don't see those too often. But for 95% of founders, that isn't going to happen. That's why they hire us. And that's also why we don't hard sell people at any stage, because you have to get comfortable with the fact that the valuation we tell you, you might not like it, but that is the reality. And ultimately, if there's a 94.1% chance you're getting a check at the end of it, for some people, if it's a big enough amount, you might never need to work again.
What's the hardest part about what you do? Like personally, what do you find?
So personally, like on a personal level, I travel a lot, I work a lot. The nature of entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs work all the time. Our clients are entrepreneurs, and they're based all over the world. So we have, particularly the senior members of our team, we travel a lot. We're working with people constantly, weekends, evenings, mornings,
Emails,
all the time. We're on hundreds of emails a day for all of us. On a deal by deal basis, I'd say the value you don't realize that the M&A firm brings is every deal at some stage will have some form of problem. Selling a business is an emotional process. Buying a business is an emotional process. It's our job to manage that and make sure that, assuming both parties are acting in good faith, if there's anyone who's trying to misrepresent or defraud, or we think there's a problem, we'll just draw a line under it and say, hey, we're not proceeding with this at all. So for us, we have a good reputation for selling businesses, but day to day we have to have a lot of difficult conversations with people and say no. So we get a lot of inbound like complaints from people where they're saying, well, I wanted to buy this business and you wouldn't let me. That's not fair. Like, well, our client is the seller. We don't represent the buyers ultimately.
And why? What are you saying to them? It's just the bid they offered or the terms they were?
Well, there's lots of different factors. I mean, ultimately, we're hired by a seller to sell their
represent the
business,
seller, yeah.
and we have to make a recommendation which is multifaceted. That's how good their bid is, how likely we think they are to complete, what we think they're going to be like to work with post-sale, and then we let the seller make a judgment call from there. But they very much lean on our expertise. So buyers often get frustrated because they're like, "Well,
why didn't you
I
represent
made the
me?
I made the highest bid," or like, "I emailed you back the fastest." And generally, if people are going to be combative at that stage, then they're probably going to be awkward at other stages in the process.
Yeah.
And it's our job to balance all of those different factors and make a recommendation.
How often do you go to sell it and then the seller is like having seller's remorse? Like, cold feet?
I would say everyone will have a form of remorse
Like
at some stage.
yeah.
It's part of the reason why we don't hard sell people up front. We want them to effectively come to us and tell us.
It just
why we
makes
should
it so
represent
essentially
them.
if you did get them hard sold up front, then you're just going to deal with the repercussions down the road.
Yeah, it gets much worse.
Yeah.
So we want you to come to us and be like, hey, I'm ready
Now's
to
the time.
process. I've spoken to my personal stakeholders, so I've spoken to my husband, wife, kids, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Spoken to our shareholders, investors, business partners, key executives in the company. We're ready to go. I'd say there's always some form of remorse once you sell, because for a lot of people we work with, they don't
It's their
necessarily
baby.
they don't know what they're going to do next. They might
Yeah.
say, well, I'm going to bank the $10 million and then I'm going to take a year off and figure it out. So remorse is not a bad thing. I'd say one of the things I've learned over the course of 750 transactions is you can't fight against things like that. So we just have to kind of roll with it. We know it's coming, and it's just managing that at the time. But ultimately, part of the reason we have such a good reputation is we don't force people to take a deal. If you really want to walk away last minute, you can. We don't then send the attorneys after you with demand letters or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you want to walk away, you walk away. We want you to sell kind of in good faith and happily, and not be in a position where you're like, yeah, they sold my business, but they kind of like put a gun to my head and make me take the deal. We don't do that. That does mean sometimes we lose out on revenue. Yes, we could put retainers in our agreement. We could put all sorts of termination clauses, but we've always felt that not having that builds a huge amount of brand goodwill long term, which is something that marketing dollars couldn't buy and really can't buy. So that's always worked well for us. Attorneys will look at our agreement and be like, guys, this is stupid. You have a 2-page agreement for a $30 million business. Why don't you have all these other provisions in there? But ultimately, we want our clients to be happy when they sell. And if they're not, contractually, you can walk away. It's our job to kind of expect that to happen throughout the process.
And just be ready to deal with it.
So that's the hard part, is knowing that there's going to be issues coming up on every deal.
Every deal.
Every single deal.
Every deal.
Most deals.
Okay.
There's always every single deal we do. There's always going to be a difficult conversation that
Somewhere.
someone has to have with one party.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's multiple conversations. Sometimes that might be jumping on a plane, depending on the
size
complexity of the deal. And the bigger deals they get complex. There's lots of things that will be challenging in that transaction. So there's lots of things to balance. It might be counting, technical, legal. There's lots of different things that we're trying to balance. And while the seller is our client, we very much do try and create balance.
Yep.
So if we're representing you, we don't then turn up with a one-sided contract when we're speaking to the buyer, or refuse any due diligence questions they have. We're very much saying, well, we think this is reasonable. What matters to you? Do you care about transition period? Do you care about valuation? Do you care about what do you care about most? And then we'll balance that and we'll say to the buyer, okay, well, I like to think all negotiation is a balancing act. I think people who are bad at negotiating think you have
They
to
don't know how to look
win
at the pieces
every
of the
single
pie.
point.
Yeah.
It's like, I want his 10 things I want,
Yeah.
his 10 things you want. I want my 10, you're not getting any. I like to think it's a balancing act. It's like, okay, well, what's most I want these 2 things. Maybe you can have these 8 things. Maybe you can have all of your things. But it's this is important to me. And that balancing out then creates a situation where at the end,
And that is your
everyone is happy.
Yeah, and that is why people work with an M&A firm, to be able to get through that. Have these negotiations without frustrating the buyer, because if you're the one negotiating, that's
and
you're
you end up paying them, they end up paying you.
yeah.
So we hope that if they hate anyone, they hate us.
Yeah, you'd be the bad guy, the bad cop. We're starting a new SaaS company. What needs to be true? Like, we're starting the best SaaS company. Thomas, what are the characteristics of this business?
So you have to have maybe not when you launch, but at some
No, we're
stage
doing
you-
this. This is real.
you
Let's say
absolutely-
we. What are we
You
doing?
absolutely have to have a pricing model which has expansion revenue. I also like products that
This is the first thing you're saying, is we need to figure out how to make so the product has expansion revenue.
you have to. You've hopefully spoken to someone like Patrick Campbell.
been on the show.
Watch his stuff.
Yeah.
He's, I guess, the godfather of.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
We'll call it
he's the
that.
guy you speak to
Yeah.
about
value pricing.
pricing.
Yeah.
You want value pricing. You want expansion revenue. Doesn't matter where that comes from, but you want that. I would say the best SaaS businesses we see target, I like to say beta, small b and above. So that might be customers that have at least
Like a mid-market.
10 to 25 employees. I do not like businesses where their biggest cohort is freelancers, individuals,
Yeah.
consumers.
So we're going 2 mil revenue type businesses, and
Yeah, I'd say like $1 million and above would be
Yeah.
a nice target. Anything that has employees and is going to consistently need your product.
yeah.
Also think the product has to fundamentally solve a need that business will always have, and be something that
We'll always have.
if the worst thing happens to that business, you're not the first thing they cancel. So for example,
critical workflow.
marketing tools can be fantastic, high growth, super popular, but they tend to trend in and out. And if a recession comes, do you cancel your fancy new marketing tool subscription, or do you cancel your something that's monitoring your server on the back end? I always think that the best companies are those that if you describe it to someone, the average person on the street, they have no idea what you're talking about, and they think it's super boring. If people think it's cool or sounds fun
If it's
or
gonna get covered on
really
TechCrunch.
interesting, it's probably not going to be a good business long term. You want something that's a deep part of that company's infrastructure
Core workflow
and core,
infrastructure,
and will forever be that. And boring. Like, people always, one of the most common questions I get when I'm interviewed is, "Hey Thomas, like, what's hot right now? What should we build? What should we do? Like, what industry should we go after?"
Yeah, I heard
And
this crypto
we
stuff.
just we avoid stuff like that. And I say, well, if it's still popular in 5 years, yeah, we'll pick it up, but you won't see us selling the biggest trending business. We're usually selling boring B2B SaaS that's been around for ages. It might not have a fancy looking website. It might not have a fancy sales team. It's probably just a good product where people like it. I think a lot of people talk about product-led growth. I like businesses that fundamentally have that. If you're a business where it's similar to what I've built in a service business, it's if you have a good product and a good service, I don't need to be the best sales guy in the world for people to want to work with us. They come to us based on our reputation and based on, if you want to sell a SaaS company for $10 million, hopefully you realize that we are your best option. Yeah, you can speak to lots of people, but hopefully you come back to us. And that's same if you're building a SaaS product, you want something where you are the kind of top of mind in your industry. If anyone's saying, "Hey, I want the X for Y."
And what about the niche? Like, do you think that's really important initially when you're building out this B2B?
Personally, no.
Okay.
I mean, I would say just general advice for founders when they're starting out. I think you need initially to be interested in that industry and niche. I think, like, in my business, for example, I read absolutely everything that happens in the industry, very related and even slightly broader than that, because I'm genuinely interested in it. Not because I'm getting paid to do that or because I'm told I have to. I'm genuinely interested. I feel like if I wasn't and you said, "Oh, what do you think about this IPO?" or "What do you think about this product?" or "What do you think about this person?" it's important you have a fundamental understanding of your industry. And if you're not interested, that's not going to work. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't necessarily have to launch a business that you're personally interested in." I don't really think that's true.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're going
If
to
you
do
want
it
to
for,
succeed,
if you're going to be
yeah.
in business for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, it has to be something you're truly interested and passionate in. at least somewhat related to that.
Somebody's looking to buy a company. I get asked this all the time. Non-SaaS people come across the founder's got a SaaS and wants to sell. What should they look for? What are the things they're supposed to be doing in due diligence?
So the first thing you should do before you even get to due diligence is establish what are you good at? What are you good at? What's your value add? If there's 3 things in the world you would say you're best at or top percentile, what is that? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it design? Is it development? And then you want to find a product which is usually lacking in those areas. It doesn't necessarily have to be like terrible in those areas, but you want a business where you can go in there and improve it. And often it'll be difficult to know what that might be. So maybe their homepage converts at 5%. You're not going to know if that's going to go to 7 or 15. But at least if you're, say, a CRO expert, you might go and say, well, I'm pretty confident with some good split testing and A/B testing, I can improve that. Or it might be that a lot of SaaS companies, particularly B2B companies we see, are terrible at email marketing. They might send emails, but that's about it. They don't do converting people from free trial to paid. That's part of their flow. It's usually quite bad. Recovering cancelled accounts usually never happens. Encouraging people to upgrade usually never happens. So if you spot companies like that and you're good at email marketing and you understand the customer journey, those can be fantastic businesses. And then again, I definitely think you want something that
play to your strengths.
You want something that you're at least interested in.
Domain, not deep domain.
The way I look at it is, even if you're acquiring this business, let's say you have investors, and you're not going to be the one running it day to day. Every business at some stage has a problem that happens at 10 p.m. on a Sunday or 4 a.m. on a Wednesday. Whatever it is, you have to have a business where you're not going to hate it or yourself if you have to make that personal sacrifice to handle it. So the way I look at it is like, if you're on vacation, if this business interrupts you for the entire vacation and you lose your 1 week of vacation you have per year, are you going to end up resenting the business or the team or whatever?
Customer, yeah.
If the answer is yes, then maybe firstly you should probably not be buying a business at all, and you probably should not be buying that business.
And then in regards to the due diligence of like, here's the things to go look for, to make sure that you're not buying a dud if you're not working with an M&A expert. What are those? What's that checklist?
Yeah, so I'd say firstly, hire people to help you in that process. Don't try to figure it all out yourself. Even if it's me doing an acquisition, I would definitely be calling in favors or hiring people who, like, I can't write any code.
What are they going to do? Yeah.
So I can't write code, so I'd hire a developer friend or agency to go through the code.
Base.
And the way I like to do it is it's the same with valuation companies. There's companies out there that will provide valuations, and you can pay them $10K to do a valuation, but then they won't actually sell your business. You can find companies out there that will do due diligence, but they won't actually then run your business. So I like to hire companies to give you a scope or effectively a quote and say, Dan, you have a marketing agency. I have a $10,000 a month budget. What would you do with this business?
Oh, that's smart, though.
Because then from there you can say, if they miss stuff or they have no incentive to.
But for the most part, they're going to do
process.
this for free because it's a statement of work.
Yeah.
Scope.
So firstly, you're entering that in good faith. You can say, hey, look, I'm looking at acquiring this company.
If I do,
can you go in? Yeah. If I do, and I give you $10,000 a month, $50,000 a month, $1 million a month, doesn't really matter what that number is. What would you do for me? I can promise you, they will dig deep into that business to tell you what you need to ask, what you need to look out for. If you just hire someone to look at it, anyone can give you an opinion. Like, yeah, that business is great, buy it. But are they the one
going to own it afterwards?
Are they the one writing the check? Are they the one who's answering the phone at 10 p.m. on a Sunday? Are they the one who's giving up their vacation if it goes wrong? So be very careful. The people who are involved in due diligence, are they going to help you post-sell? You do need to understand as well that if you're going to write a check, ultimately you are the one who's responsible for that. So yes, you should hire people and bring in experts in the process, but ultimately the buck stops with you. You have to make that decision. If you don't understand or you don't know, like, make sure you do. So I like to bring in experts to kind of understand different parts of the process. The fundamental thing to ask yourself is, if I buy this business today, do I have everything I need to continue running the business, assuming the founder or the founders disappear on day one?
You just assume that.
so in reality, it basically never happens.
But it's good.
But you have to
play that
work
up.
on the assumption: what do I not know if that founder disappears, and then hedge against that. That does not mean, and again, the art to negotiation is creating a balance. So there's very rarely a situation, assuming there's not been any misrepresentation, where that makes it a no-go. Due diligence is always a balancing act. Find a problem, hedge against that problem. So it might be, if the founder left, the code is not really documented because he's written it all from day one. So contingent on the deal instead of saying, this is too risky, we're out, which is very much a first-time buyer. A lot of our job is, that's why we like to work with buyers who are experienced, because they don't walk away when there's that issue. So in that case, you might say, okay, well, I want the owner to fully document or spend 100 hours doing it before we'll release any funds from escrow. Or maybe instead of a 3-month training period, you want 6 months. But you'll do things to create incentives and keep it fair. So it wouldn't be, I'm not paying you $10 million for the business anymore. It's now 5. It's not
proportionate to what you're asking them.
So I think one of the challenges with, and I don't watch a huge amount of TV, but the challenge with a lot of like business shows on TV and anything that shows negotiating on TV, I always feel like it's over dramatized to the stage where people think negotiating is all about screwing the other person over and cutting the number in half. If you're in a process and you cut the valuation to 5 million from 10 million because
seller. Yeah.
there's the code's not very well documented, that's just stupid. So be careful of what you have seen elsewhere. Like, negotiation is a balance. Negotiation isn't all about who's like the loudest or the smartest in the room. It's always about creating that balance. So be practical in the process, and also don't be afraid to ask. If you're working with us in the process and you're the buyer, and there's something genuine you've spotted or identified that makes you uncomfortable, bring it up. The worst thing is if you have all these things start building up and you say, hey, I'm out, or I'm just not comfortable. Almost everything can be hedged. And sellers we work with, because we don't hard sell them on the process, most people spend many years or months researching how the process works. They will probably, and we probably do not know about this, they will probably speak to other people who have worked with us before and be like, what's the bad stuff I need to know? And that's usually in due diligence. Stuff will come up, expect it, and we will train them through the process that this is going to happen, but you don't always know what that is. And depending on the buyer you're working with, what they might spot and what might be an issue to them might mean nothing to you. So if you're a developer and day to day you've spent the last 20 years looking at code every single day, and someone says, I'm a bit uncomfortable because code's not well documented, you might think, that's stupid because it's easy to understand. So in that case, it's like, well, why not offer them 100 hours of this or 500 hours, whatever it might be. So create a balancing act. As a buyer, don't be afraid to ask for things, but avoid the drama in the negotiation and make it proportionate. And that way you're going to end up in a situation where, even if you sign a contract and buy someone's business, if you've kind of screwed them over at the end and you know they have to sell the business because
they don't have
they have to sell, and you put a gun to the head,
or something,
then once you're outside your contracted support period in say 12 months time, don't expect them to pick up the phone when you need them.
Happens. Yeah.
So I think it's very important, just in business in general, like
play the long game.
You can go to a huge number of conferences, events, you can read blogs. There's seemingly tens of thousands of people out there, but the one thing I've learned over the years is that actually the industry is, regardless of what industry you're in, is actually very, very small, and there are usually a very specific group of people that influence whether people like you or they don't like you, and it's important not to screwing people over just for your own good.
I call these invisible doors. Essentially, there's doors that you don't know that might be closed because of something you did to a person.
So don't screw people over. Yeah. Be honest throughout the process. And ultimately realize that our job is to have difficult conversations. Our aim is that at the end of the process, if you sell your business, you have a great relationship with the buyer, and the seller has a great relationship with the buyer. Everyone has a great relationship, but if there's any sort of like ill will, that's towards us. We're the ones who effectively throw ourselves under the bus to get a deal done. So if it's like something was forgotten
Thomas
or
wouldn't let me do it.
or misplaced in the
Yeah.
in the process. As long as we don't think there's anything malicious, we might say, well, oh yeah, we mislaid this file, or that's on us, or sorry, we miscommunicated.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, from a marketing perspective, we have a difficult business to market beyond just reputationally, because when deals happen, we can't publicize them all the time. Usually they're private.
Yep.
We very rarely get on the buyer and seller up on stage at a conference talking about how they sold their business. Here's the term sheet. Here's the contract. Just never happens.
Over the last decade you've been building this business, Thomas, I'd love to ask, who have you had to become to continue to grow this kind of company?
So I think at a fundamental level, you have to be a good negotiator to sell businesses day in, day out. There's no way to get around that.
And
that
how have
means
you done that for yourself?
I think the big thing for me, like, I'm naturally an introvert. I think and I naturally avoid confrontation. The big thing for me was not learning to be confrontational, but learning when to push, when not to push, learning when you have leverage, when you don't have leverage, learning to have that make that difficult phone call. No one likes making difficult phone calls. The nature of my job day to day is it has to happen. Our team have to do that. We train them as they get more confident, do more deals. That becomes more natural, and you realize that ultimately we're doing it for the good of the client and the good of the deal. Another thing you realize is that if you feel uncomfortable doing something, you have to tell people. We never do things. Put it this way, I've never done anything where I've gone to bed at night saying, I think that person got screwed over, or we made someone do something that they shouldn't have done. Never once gone to bed and felt that. So I think it's super important to do the right thing, even if that's not something that financially benefits you. It might be a deal recently, 8-figure deal. The client towards the end of the process was beginning to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and she said, "Hey Thomas, what happens if I want to walk away? Are you gonna come after me?" And I would say, "Well, no, absolutely not. If you're comfortable, walk away." In the end, it worked quite well, because we said to the buyer, "Hey, look, seller's no longer comfortable with your terms that you've been gradually changing. Therefore, take it or leave it." And the buyer took it, so that worked well. But if I was not willing to have that conversation and say, "Well, of course you can walk away," that never would have happened. So I could have pushed her into it and said, "Oh, well, we spent all this time, all these flights I've been on and late night phone calls. It's not fair. It's cost us $10,000.
Yeah.
So never do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or bad. If you do, you should probably be in a different business. We work with a lot of people who leave the banking industry and they then want to launch a private equity firm or buy a business. And for a lot of these people, they have stories of just how they hated their job because they're made to sell things that they do not believe is in the best interest of their client. And you're in a position of power. If I say to you, "Hey, your business is worth $1 million and is actually worth 10, and then my buddy's buying that business off of you," that can, I'd probably get away with it, but it doesn't really do any good in the long run. So I'd say learn to be a good negotiator. Learning that things, as a business owner in general, things will go wrong. Every day there'll be new problems. So I don't think there's ever a day in my life where I get up and there's not something has gone wrong. You just ultimately have to realize that as a business owner. I'm lucky that I have a business partner. He's CEO. So between the two of us, we both have not completely different skills. We are quite different personality-wise. So that means day-to-day problems, we can usually separate them out and say, "Okay, well, I'll deal with this. You deal with that." And that works quite well. I think you do need to have that someone to fall back on and that kind of mechanism. It doesn't necessarily have to be a business partner. It could be a key executive. But having that support network is important, because as a business scales, what you realize as well, and this is probably the big fundamental change that happened for me beyond just refining my skills, you realize as a business grows, your responsibility is no longer, your goals become a lot less selfish. When I started out, I was like, "Oh, my biggest goal is to become a millionaire." Kind of did not come from a background of money. A millionaire to me was a kind of unachievably large amount. So I was like, "Okay, well, millionaire." And then you get there and you realize that maybe you want 10. And then you think, well, you get there and you think, well, that can just keep going. But actually what happens is your responsibilities completely change. Like when I started the business, I was young, free, single, had not care in the world. I'm now married. I now have considerations in that part of my life. From a business perspective, we have a team of 45 people. They have kids, mortgages, dreams, ambitions. They want to do well. So you realize that a lot of the selfish goals I had starting out are not really what I think about now. Day to day, it's all about serving clients, but also the team. I don't want to be in a position where someone says, Thomas and Ismail, my business partner, CEO, they ran the company into the ground because they were paying themselves all of the profit, driving around in like fancy cars, buying nice apartments, going on vacation all the time, didn't take it seriously. So that's one thing I say to entrepreneurs really early on. If you're going to learn one thing, is before you hire, maybe the first couple of people, doesn't matter. If you actually want to hire people and grow your business, you have to realize that once you hire people, that their life is in your control. Unless you're a sociopath, you probably don't want to be in a position where you're responsible. Your bad decisions are responsible for
pain in their world.
People not being able to pay their mortgage or people losing their job. I've fortunately never been in a position where, so I've had to let people go over the years, unfortunately. But I've never been in a position where I've had to let anyone go because we've overhired or
made a bad
decision. Something's not working. It's always been kind of in good faith. It's like, hey, it's not working out. So that's a big thing to realize, that your goals when you start your business will almost definitely be selfish. As you grow, it becomes much more about the people. You can't just walk away. Like you are responsible to those people. And if you're not willing to take on that responsibility, don't start a business or keep it small.
Don't grow.
Hire 2 people, hire freelancers, work from home, do what you want.
Everybody should check out your blog, FE International. You've got a lot of great content on buying, selling, all the whole process. Where do people find you online, Thomas?
So if you can't find me at a conference, then you'll find me online. All of our social media channels are super active. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Find me there.
What's your favorite? LinkedIn right now?
I'd say I'm usually on Facebook the most. Cool. You can always email me. I would say in general, we've very intentionally built a really good team of people who are good at their jobs, and they're better at their job than I would be at their job. Therefore, if you have a specific question, yes, you're welcome to reach out to me. But generally, the team, if you're looking to sell a business, we can give you a valuation. You're probably not talking to me. Want to buy a business, speak to that team. They're good at their job. So you're welcome to seek me out. But I'd always encourage people to
Thomas at
feinational.com.
Perfect.
So you can always email me directly, but the team are great.
They're the ones
they're
better
at their job. And they're in the office every day. I'm usually
at a conference. Dude,
on
everywhere I go, you're there. Really appreciate it, Thomas.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Awesome talk.
Thanks for watching this episode of Escape Velocity. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with your biggest insight from our conversation. Be sure to check out the next episode.